Welcome back to the deep dive. Now, few people achieve the kind of global recognition Mother Teresa did. I mean, beatified, Nobel laureate, really seen as a symbol of selfless dedication.
Absolutely. That public image is incredibly strong. But the source material you shared with us, well, it paints a very, very different picture. Highly critical.
Right. And that's our focus today. We're diving deep only into the specific claims in those sources you provided. We're not here to, relitigate her entire legacy.
Exactly. Our mission is just to extract and organize those allegations. It's about understanding the criticisms presented.
Okay, got it. So let's get into it. The main narrative we're following seems to stem from a pretty controversial documentary back in 1994.
That's what the source points to, yeah.
Mm.
It was called Hell's Angel,
Yeah.
led by Christopher Hitchens. And the source argues this film and the research that followed sort of pulled back the curtain on what they call her real face.
Hell's Angel. Quite a title. Okay, that seems like the place to start then. Let's dive into section 1. These really quite shocking claims about patient care in the Missionaries of Charity facilities.
And what's striking immediately is how, well, fundamental these claims are. It's not just saying care was inadequate. The source claims the conditions directly led to the deaths of thousands of children.
Thousands, wow. That's a staggering claim right off the bat. It moves beyond just lack of resources, doesn't it?
It really does. It points towards something systemic, something dangerous, according to this source material.
And it gets very specific, too. They mention reusing injection needles, like the same needle, patient after patient.
Yeah, which, I mean, medically, that's completely indefensible.
Yeah.
Especially with sick, vulnerable people. You're basically setting up a system to spread infections.
Hepatitis, HIV, things like that.
Exactly. Serious, life-threatening diseases.
Hmm.
The source suggests it was a kind of extreme, maybe unnecessary austerity that disregarded basic modern medical practice.
Beyond the needles, there are also claims about how patients were handled, something about restraining children.
Yes, the source uses this term, disbalanced children, which sounds quite jarring, but that's the term used, referring to kids with developmental disabilities. It claims they were tied up with ropes.
Tied up. That shifts from medical negligence into, well, basic human dignity, doesn't it?
It certainly raises those questions. If true, it suggests more of a custodial approach rather than therapeutic care. Using physical restraints like that on vulnerable individuals, it's a major red flag about patient rights.
And the problems allegedly went deeper, even to the staff themselves. The source claims the doctors were, quote, fake. They use the Hindi word, nakli.
Nakli, yeah, meaning fake, imposter. That's an extraordinary accusation.
Does the source give specific examples, or is it more a general claim about a lack of qualified professionals?
It seems more like a broader claim. The implication is that because these doctors were supposedly nakli, patients weren't getting the right medicine, maybe not even the right diagnoses.
Okay, so that connects the dots then, if the staff aren't qualified.
Exactly. It leads back to the poor hygiene, the alleged misdiagnoses, lack of proper treatment, and ultimately potentially preventable deaths. The picture painted is one where maybe religious devotion or just saving money came before basic medical needs.
And speaking of needs versus austerity, there's this one detail that seems particularly telling about the alleged philosophy. The source claims patients weren't allowed hot water for religious reasons.
That specific detail is quite revealing, isn't it? Because it suggests this wasn't just about, say, a broken boiler.
Right.
The source frames it as a deliberate choice, possibly theological, like an embrace of suffering, maybe shared poverty, over providing very basic human comfort. The criticism implies the focus was perhaps more on how people died rather than helping them live better.
So really serious claims about the medical side, which brings up the obvious question. If things were allegedly so bad, where was the money going? Because they weren't short of funds, were they?
That's the huge contradiction that critics point to. The source material is very clear. Mother Teresa and the Missionaries of Charity were apparently receiving massive donations, multi-million-dollar amounts from India and abroad, a huge inflow.
But the conditions described were dire.
Exactly. So where did it go? That's the central financial question raised.
And it gets even more ethically complex when you look at who was donating, according to the source. It explicitly claims she took money from known criminals and fraudsters.
Yes. And that, for any charity, immediately sets off alarm bells, right? Accepting funds from people known for corruption. Well, critics argue it suggests a sort of ends justify the means thinking.
Get the money in no matter where it came from.
That seems to be the implication critics draw, that maybe the priority was just accumulating wealth for the institution, overlooking the moral source of the funds.
Did the source suggest how they might have justified taking that kind of money?
The critique often implied this idea that once the money was in their hands, it was somehow sanctified or cleaned, and its origins didn't matter anymore. But critics see that as undermining the transparency and integrity you'd expect from a charity.
Okay, so that's the cash angle. But there's another major ethical claim in this section, moving from money to, well, faith. The issue of conversion.
Yes. This is another core part of the criticism. The source material alleges that a key function was converting people to Christianity, often without proper permission.
Without permission, how did they claim that happened, especially with people who were maybe dying?
Well, the allegation is that it was often done subtly. Staff might perform rituals, like a baptism, sometimes using vague language, without the patient fully understanding or consenting. This was supposedly especially common with those near death.
So the critique is that the primary goal wasn't just aid, but proselytization.
That's precisely the argument. For critics, this is a profound violation. They argue the organization prioritized the perceived spiritual salvation, getting that conversion over the person's immediate physical comfort or respecting their own religious beliefs and autonomy.
That really reframes the whole mission, if true. From purely selfless aid to something, well, coercive, targeting the most vulnerable.
Exactly. It suggests the help came with strings attached, a spiritual agenda, which compromises the neutrality you'd normally expect in humanitarian work.
Okay, let's wrap up the financial part then in Section 3. We've established money was allegedly pouring in, including from dubious sources, but wasn't being spent on improving care. So what was the end result? What's the big figure cited after her death?
Right. The source tries to put a number on the accumulated wealth,
Hmm.
and the figure cited is, well, it's enormous. 752 lakh crore rupees.
752 lakh crore rupees. That number might be hard for many listeners to grasp. Can you put that into perspective, maybe roughly in US dollars or euros?
Sure. It's an Indian numbering system term, lakh crore. But just for a rough idea, depending on the exchange rates used when the source published this, we're talking potentially hundreds of billions of US dollars.
Hundreds of billions.
Yeah. It's a figure that puts the organization's wealth, allegedly, on par with major multinational corporations, or maybe even the budget of a significant country's NGO sector.
Wow. Okay, that context is vital. So that number is like the capstone for the financial critique. This staggering, potentially unspent wealth existing alongside the claims of dire poverty and neglect in their facilities.
It creates that ultimate contrast the critics lean on.
Hmm.
The public image of austerity versus this alleged private reality of immense wealth.
Okay. So we've worked through the source material, focusing only on these criticisms. Let's try to quickly summarize the main categories we've covered.
Right. We basically synthesized three main pillars of criticism from this source. First, the claims about patient care. The reused needles, the knockly doctors restraining children, the high death rates alleged.
Okay, that's pillar 1, operations and medical standards.
Then second, the money controversies. Huge donations coming in, but also accepting funds from alleged criminals and fraudsters, the ethics around the funding sources.
Pillar 2, finances and donor issues.
And third, the claims about conscience, really. The alleged practice of converting patients, particularly the dying, without full consent.
Pillar 3, conversion practices. Got it. And just to reiterate, this whole deep dive was focused only on the critical view presented in the source material you shared, heavily influenced by that '94 documentary and subsequent reports.
Exactly. Which brings us to a final thought, maybe for you, the listener, to consider. When you have a figure like Mother Teresa, someone revered globally, even sainted by the church, yet simultaneously facing such detailed, serious criticisms about public health, finances, ethics, you're left with these two incredibly polarized stories.
It's a real challenge, isn't it? How do you, as someone trying to understand history, weigh these competing narratives, especially when the claims are so significant, billions of dollars, thousands of lives? One side says sainthood, the other systematic negligence.
And verifying claims of this scale is incredibly complex. But perhaps wrestling with that complexity, trying to understand how we could even verify such things, regardless of where you might personally lean. That's the real work that begins after just hearing the allegations.
Something to definitely think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always interesting.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.